talking about some new polls from Battleground states and about Donald Trump's attempts to avoid personal attacks aimed at people who come out against him. Late today, the Republican nominee for president scrambled our plans and created yet another firestorm for his campaign. Watch for yourself what Trump said this afternoon at a rally in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Hillary wants to essentially abolish the Second Amendment. By the way, and if she gets to pick her judges, nothing you can do, folks. Although the Second Amendment people, maybe there is, I don't know. But I'll tell you what, that will be a horrible day. If Hillary gets to put her judges, right now we're tied. If you don't do what's the right thing, you're not going to have, either you're not going to have a Second Amendment, you're not going to have much of it left, and you're not going to be able to protect yourselves, which you need. You know, when the bad guys burst into your house, they're not looking about Second Amendments and do I have the right to do this?
Democrats quickly and widely condemned what Trump said. It was condemned by Clinton campaign manager Robbie Mook, who sent out a statement saying, quote, "This is simple. What Trump is saying is dangerous. A person seeking to be the president of the United States should not suggest violence in any way." Trump's senior communications advisor, Jason Miller, also put out a statement pretty quickly. His said, "It's called the power of unification. Second Amendment people have amazing spirit and are tremendously unified, which gives them great political power. And this year, they'll be voting in record numbers, and it won't be for Hillary Clinton. It will be for Donald Trump." The NRA also weighed in with two tweets. The first one said, @RealDonaldTrump Trump is right. If Hillary Clinton gets to pick her anti-Second Amendment SCOTUS judges, there's nothing we can do. Second tweet continued, quote, "But there is something we can do on Election Day. Show up and vote for the Second Amendment. Defend the Second Amendment. Never Hillary." Whether you credit Jason Miller's explanation or not, Trump's remark is certain to dominate this news cycle and be in the political bloodstream for a long time. Donnie Deutsch is here again tonight for John. So, Donnie, again, Democrats are condemning this widely. What does this say about the Trump campaign's ability to keep their candidate on message, and what are the implications of what he said this afternoon?
So, quote a great fan of the show, Britney Spears, "Oops, he did it again." You know, that statement was both untruthful and uncouth. Untruthful in the sense of she's not looking to take people's guns away. We know that. So it's a complete factual absurdity. But more importantly, and yes, it was a joke, you can't read it any other way. What he was joking about, not literal, but clearly you can't read it any other way, was, oh, you know, well, then take matters into your own hand, get a gun, and do what you have to do vis-a-vis Hillary Clinton. Assassination jokes are not funny. You and I were talking this morning with your great team here, talking about, oh, we need to do a segment on, you know, how long can Trump stay focused? How long can Trump stay on message? How long can Trump not step in doo-doo? Well, we just saw it, and it's a big one. And it's not funny anymore. It's just not funny. This man is running for commander-in-chief. And to be joking, to suggest, hey, take matters in your own hands, we are a country, we have a lot of loons in this country. And all you have to do is affect one person. So as an American, as a dad, as somebody who has always liked Donald personally, and I keep, caveating that, and it's hard to continue to say that, shame on him.
He's gotten death threats. The Clintons have gotten death threats. He loves to be a showman. He loves to joke. This is a joke that was not appropriate. The campaign, if they were going to get people to believe that he was talking about rallying people who support the Second Amendment, they're welcome to try. The best you could say about their statement is they should understand that that's not how most people interpreted it. That clip's going to be shown hundreds of times over the next 24 hours. They're not apologizing. They're not backing down. They're welcome to have that posture, but they better understand, at a minimum, that people aren't interpreting it that way, and that it is out of bounds to discuss. And once again, he is playing into the main critique, not just of Hillary Clinton, but of his Republican critics, that he does not have the temperament to be president of the United States.
Everything we saw the Republican convention, it was about fear. That's about fear. He literally was saying to that audience, you know, when the bad guys come into your house, is that the government, whoever that may be, it's getting old and it's not working. You saw the bumps out of the convention. We'll get to some polls in a little while. I just watched him yesterday in that speech, and I watched when the hecklers were up there. I've never seen him more uncomfortable. This is who he is. He's an entertainer. He's a lounge act. And this is what he does. You could do that as a lounge act. You can't do that as a presidential
You can do it on
candidate.
Howard Stern if you're a businessman, real estate developer from New York. You cannot joke about assassination. As someone who's under U.S. Secret Service protection, he should know. You can't make flip comments about it. You just can't. And I believe that this is one, we've said it about 1,000 other things. Given the timing of this and the nature of what he said, this is a problem for him. Now, we should say that he's not the first person under U.S. Secret Service protection to joke about guns and violence. Here's Joe Biden from September 2008 campaigning in Virginia.
I guarantee you, Barack Obama ain't taking my shotguns, so don't buy that malarkey. Don't buy that malarkey. They're gonna start peddling that to you. I got two. If he tries to fool with my Beretta, he's got a problem.
He tries to pull my Beretta, he's got a problem. Talking about his running mate, a guy who's under, both of whom were under Secret Service protection at a time. Same to me, same kind of thing, making a joke about someone else who's being protected, who's had death threats against him, saying, you mess with my guns, you'll have a problem.
One was somebody he was talking about who is his partner and friend, and the other was prescriptive, talking to people to do something. Yes, both humorous. You could say that was a bad take.
Should Joe Biden have taken heat for that joke?
I think you have to put it in context. I think like anything else.
Yes or no? Should Joe Biden have taken heat for that joke?
No.
I say yes.
No.
Why? He's making a joke about saying
because
Barack
he's talking
Obama
about himself. It'd be like you and I
Donnie,
joking.
It's still a joke threatening violence. It's the exact same thing. It's a joke threatening violence.
I'm going to go back to the C word, the context word, and you and I will agree to disagree on that one. I think they were very, very different, and I think particularly with everything else that's going on with Trump. It's the same joke as, boy, I wish the Russians should hack in and help us out and get those 30,000 emails. They're all jokes, but they're all bad jokes, and they're all at the expense of our national security, and they're all temperamentally insane.
I hope I've been clear condemning what Trump said, but I do believe that Republicans are going to look at what Joe Biden said, and they'll probably find other examples of Democrats joking about guns. And if you want to have the moral authority to condemn what Trump said, I don't think you can look at what Joe Biden said and just dismiss it.
The only problem is when you're running a Clinton ad, and in that ad you're running sound bites, whether it's about the cons, whether it's about the Russians hacking us, whether it's about this, you're not going to have a counter argument in an ad talking about something that Joe Biden said 8 years ago.
Well, I understand, but I'm talking about the civility of our discourse.
And there is discourse. Okay, we're going to be talking more about this throughout the program. Meanwhile, as we mentioned, there are new Battleground state polls out today. They showed mixed results for Donald J. Trump, billionaire. In Pennsylvania, Quinnipiac University poll and a new survey by NBC News, The Wall Street Journal, and Marist both show Hillary Clinton leading Donald Trump by double digits. That largely matches the national numbers we've been seeing lately. But other state polls depict a much closer race. In Ohio, Quinnipiac shows Trump trailing by only 4 points. NBC has him down by 5. Both are within the poll's margins of error. And in Iowa, NBC found Clinton with a 4-point lead. But look at this Florida poll by Quinnipiac. A statistical tie with Clinton at 46% and Trump at 45%. We should note that Quinnipiac had them close in these states last month, though Pennsylvania has clearly shifted in Clinton's direction. Mark, we can slice and dice this both ways. Good news or bad news for Trump?
Well, look, the fact that these battleground states are close, I think you'd have to argue is good news for Trump. If Trump can somehow win Iowa, win Ohio, win Florida, in striking distance in all of them, he's close to 270. Now, Pennsylvania right now is part of almost any calculation, so that's a problem. For all the time he spent there, it's going to spend more time there for sure. But if these numbers came out without the national numbers, you'd say, given the bad period Trump's had, he's in decent shape.
I think there's some very good numbers for Trump, surprisingly good numbers. You could not have had a worse 2 weeks for a candidate, both on dueling conventions, and we know what Trump did last week. In a strange way, there's also a silver lining in the blackout of Pennsylvania. It allows the Trump campaign to focus and say, you know what? We're giving up on that. We're going all in Ohio, all in on Florida, because there are a few different paths. Clearly, he needs, particularly because of Pennsylvania, he needs Ohio, he needs Florida. So to me, coming off these 2 weeks, if I'm Trump, I'm very upbeat on those numbers, because you go to yourself, wow, what if he didn't have the bad 2 weeks? What if it was in reverse?
And the other thing, he's been pounded with TV ads in those states
46
and
million
he's not,
to zero.
And he's not put on, the super PACs are up a little bit, but it's
Right.
basically zero. He's not on there. So as they raise money, if they go on TV there, you could argue if he has better time, today notwithstanding, in the earned media, and he runs ads, you know, you can start talking about being in striking distance.
What it also shows is what he said early on. I could go out in the street and kill somebody, and people would still vote for me. There is a close, it seems to be 38, 39, 40%.
Yep.
People, no matter what he does, they're sticking with him.
All right. Trump was hoping that his Detroit economic speech yesterday would calm Republican nerves, and for the first time since his convention would maybe win him a news cycle. Instead, he had to share the stage with more headlines about Republican dissension. One of the harshest blows in the last 24 hours came from Republican Senator Susan Collins of Maine, who last night published an op-ed piece in the Washington Post website titled "Why I Cannot Support Trump." 3 moments, she says, helped her make up her mind: his perceived mocking of New York Times reporter Serge Kovaleski, who has a physical disability, Trump's controversial statements about federal judge Gonzalo Curiel, and Trump's ongoing feud with the Khan family from the Democratic convention. This afternoon, Senator Collins went on CNN to further explain her decision.
I have always supported my party's nominee. That's what made this decision so difficult. But in the end, I just cannot support Donald Trump. I do not believe that he is the president that we need at this time in our country's history. And I believe that in many ways he is antithetical to the values of the Republican Party. The Republican Party believes in the dignity and worth of the individual. Based on what I've seen Donald Trump say over and over and over again, that is not his style.
Now, on Meet the Press Daily, Collins did come to Trump's defense, or at least seemed to, by saying regarding his comments about gun control, that Trump, or about gun owners rather, and Hillary Clinton, that Trump was suggesting, quote, that Second Amendment advocates around the country might come together to pressure the Senate, which is pretty much what the Trump campaign is saying. So Collins at least with Trump on that. Now, Collins' endorsement, or Collins' announcement that she's not supporting Trump comes at the same news cycle that 50 former Republican national security and homeland security officials came out against Trump. They warned that their party's nominee would be, quote, the most reckless president in American history. Democrats, of course, gleeful about all these defections. I think Senator Collins saying she's not voting for Trump is a bigger deal than these national security officials. Donnie, you think the letter is a bigger deal. Make your case.
I couldn't disagree more. The best way to see what a message means is think about a voter. And if I had to convince a voter, and I was going to say that voter, particularly if it's a woman, I don't care where your politics are. I don't care whether you're left or right. I don't care where you are on taxes. 2 men that ran Homeland Security, 2 former CIA directors, both from an apolitical point of view, said this man is unfit, makes us vulnerable, is a danger to this country. Our prime instinct is survival. It trumps everything else. No pun intended. How do you beat that?
You beat it with an elected official who, while she's not up for re-election, is widely respected within the party, widely liked within the party. She got a lot of coverage today. I'd say, looking at the coverage, she got more coverage than that letter did. And she is much more likely, I think, to have the kind of spillover effect and echo effect. She's good friends with John McCain, for instance. I think Susan Collins cited reasons for opposing him that will be cited by others. And those people can dominate the news cycle. Bureaucrats, most of whom are not known, cannot dominate a news cycle.
It's not about that. If I'm running an ad and I'm putting one of those in an ad, you know what I'm putting in that ad. I think there is no contest. Survival instincts are in play here. These are people inside the game. Yes, another politician, particularly a moderate Republican, and that plays into Trump's, you know what, the establishment, they don't like me. You know, of course not.
But he said the same thing about these officials. He said these are the people who have engaged in bad judgment. These people, some of them are better known, like a Tom Ridge.
Tom Ridge, sure.
But they're not national figures. And I think one of Trump's strongest arguments has been, do you feel safe now? Do you think we're doing an effective job fighting ISIS? Do you think voting for the Iraq war was a good idea, even though his record on opposing the war is questionable? That, to me, is a stronger argument. The argument against Susan Collins, yeah, she's a career politician, but she's from Maine. Her influence in Maine is vast. Her influence over Republican officials, I think, could be quite big. And I'll say again, The argument they're using, I agree, national security, but they're also using this argument about Trump simply being unfit, and her op-ed piece was eloquent on that score.
I'm telling you one thing. You say to somebody, him with the nuclear codes, not good for your kids. That's all you need to do.
All right, up next, we're going to talk to one of Hillary Clinton's advisors about today's Donald Trump news and about Clinton's Detroit rebuttal speech later this week on the economy right after this. With us now from Washington, D.C., Neera Tanden. She's the president of the Center for American Progress. She served in both the Clinton and Obama administrations and was the policy director for Hillary Clinton's 2008 campaign. Again, she joins us from Washington. Neera, thanks for joining us.
Great to be with you.
Want to start by having you and our viewers listen again to what Donald Trump said today in North Carolina.
Hillary wants to essentially abolish the Second Amendment. By the way, and if she gets to pick her judges, nothing you can do, folks. Although the Second Amendment people, maybe there is, I don't know.
Neera, what do you think of what Donald Trump said?
I think that many people believe that Donald Trump is temperamentally unfit to be president, and he used his remarks today to prove it. I think his remarks were dangerous. There's been a lot of violence at his rallies, a lot of violence that he's encouraged directly, and now to have language like that when you're dealing with the nominee of the Democratic Party, a presidential candidate, I think is outrageous and just shows that he should be nowhere close to the Oval Office.
Neera, going to Trump's economic speech the other day, he mentioned Hillary's job-killing $1.3 trillion tax increase plan. Can you break down where that $1.3 trillion in tax increases comes from?
You know, I can't actually. I don't know where his numbers come from. When you look at his fact sheet, it's pretty bare in terms of the details of his own plan. You know, Hillary does believe, and she said this in the convention, that we do have to ensure that the wealthy are paying their fair share in taxes. I think a lot of people are concerned that that's not happening. It's fascinating to me that for most of this year, Donald Trump has been arguing that he's an advocate for hardworking families and he's a champion for the working men and women of this country. And then in devising his tax plan, he doubled down on essentially giving the vast majority of tax breaks, the very vast majority of tax breaks, to the wealthiest and well-connected who are advising him, himself, his friends. It really tells me that that was all just a bait and switch for voters, and he can't be trusted on economic issues.
Neera, I want to come back to this issue of what Donald Trump said today, if I could. Do I remember correctly or incorrectly that you were with Hillary Clinton on the day in 2008 when she made reference to the murder of Robert Kennedy?
I was not with her when she made those comments.
Okay, but you did talk to her about what happened, right? Or do I not? Am I misremembering that you weren't involved in that at all?
I don't think I was involved with that, but I would say these are very, very different remarks than anything that was discussed today.
Let me just remind people what she said, because Republicans already bring this up, and I just want you to get a chance to respond and say why you think it's different. It was at the end of the nomination fight, and there was a question about why she was still staying in the race. And she brought up the notion that things happened late in nomination fights and that Robert Kennedy had been killed late in the nomination fight. Some of President Obama's, then Senator Obama's supporters looked at that as kind of a reference to the notion that perhaps he could be killed and took some offense at it. So Trump was clearly kidding, I believe. It's true that a topic maybe he should not be joking about, not maybe, shouldn't be joking about. Do you see any parallel there? What do you say to Republicans who say she has a history of making the same kind of remarks off the cuff?
I would say there's absolutely no parallel. She's talking about a person that I think you've written she had deep respect for. In that race, she'd never said anything remotely as belligerent against then Senator Obama as Donald Trump says every day. This takes place against the backdrop of a lot more violence in his rallies. People are actually getting beaten up in his rallies, and people are making chants like "lock her up" and even worse in her rallies. And then to make a comment about essentially a potential murder of your opponent seems really far out of bounds. And I think obviously Republicans are going to go look at comments of everyone to kind of clean this up. But we all know what this is, which is a further demonstration that a person who has been telling everyone, essentially is going to prove that he can stay on message can't do it because he makes comments like this.
Okay. Mike Pence was asked by reporters moments ago if Donald Trump had implied violence, and he answered, quote, "Of course not." We're going to talk more about the Trump statement, but when we come back, more with Neera, more on the economy and what Secretary Clinton's going to talk about this week, right after this. We're back with Neera Tanden at the Center for American Progress, longtime advisor to Hillary Clinton. She's going to give a major speech on the economy in Detroit on Thursday. I'm wondering what you think she'll say there or in the course of this campaign about saving money in the long term for Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, where all serious deficit reduction efforts must begin and end.
Well, she's already talked about all of those issues. In fact, she's described in detail her plans to ensure that Social Security is solvent. We can do that by ensuring that we have appropriate revenue for Social Security. Obviously, she's had proposals to bend the cost curve in Medicare, but keep the program stable for retirees and for people who are relying on it. So those are issues she's championed, and as she points out, all of her plans are paid for. She does not blow a $10 trillion or $1 trillion hole in the deficit, and she believes in pay-as-you-go for her programs that she's investing in. That's been the case from day one of this campaign.
Neera, Hillary Clinton left office as Secretary of State with just about a 70% approval rating. And obviously since then, there's been Benghazi and there's been the emails, but there's such a strong dislike and disapproval in so many ways that I have a theory that, when Elizabeth Warren was running for office, terrible disapproval. Once she was in office, approval. And I read a study that we don't have problems with women once they're in power, but when they're striving for power, that can be very threatening. And this was a psychological study. Any thoughts on that? Because there's such a dislike that just doesn't add up, given, yes, there are scandals, and it's across the board, and it's in the numbers.
I've actually been heartened that some of those numbers have improved, and some polls improved dramatically. Obviously, she has faced a lot of withering criticism. There's been investment, really, by a range of super PACs against her for a very long time, and she's gotten a lot more negative coverage. Indeed, we have a lot of studies that show that she's received far more negative coverage than any candidate, including Donald Trump. But she had a great convention. I think she was able to speak directly to people, and her numbers are improving somewhat dramatically.
I'm sorry, I got to cut you off. We got to go to break. Neera Tanden, thanks so much. We'll be right back with the newest presidential candidate in the race after this.
Our next guest is a fellow Wharton graduate, David Evan McMullin, but his friends just call him Evan. He's a former chief policy director for the House Republican Conference and a former CIA officer. And yesterday, he announced he was running as an independent candidate for president. And today he joins us here in the studio. Evan McMullin, thank you for coming. But before we get started, we just want to show you, you're seeing this for the first time.
I am.
What Donald Trump said today in North Carolina.
Great.
Hillary wants to essentially abolish the Second Amendment. By the way, and if she gets to pick her judges, nothing you can do, folks. Although the Second Amendment people, maybe there is, I don't know.
His campaign says he was talking about mobilizing Second Amendment voters. What do you think of that?
Oh, look, I think it's time to start calling a spade with Donald Trump. We know what he means when he refuses to condemn David Duke and other white supremacists. We know what he means when he suggests that his supporters should take violent action against those who oppose him politically. And I think we know what he means when he suggests that gun owners should take some violent action towards Hillary or whoever it was.
There's no doubt that's what that was a joke, but that's what he meant, no doubt.
Look, I believe that. Look, it's clear. It seems fairly clear to me. I mean, this is just what kind of guy he is. It's consistent with his pattern and consistent with the kind of things, his rhetoric, the kind of things he does. So it's just more Donald Trump, but that's just the tip of the iceberg with him.
Okay, we want to talk to you about policy. You're obviously new to almost everybody in America. You were a policy director. I want to start by asking you about an issue that's been big in our politics for the last couple of years, same-sex marriage.
Sure.
It's happened very quickly, that it's now legal. Are you comfortable with the way it's happened and the current state of the law of the land on same-sex marriage?
Well, my position on that is that as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I believe in traditional marriage between a man and a woman, but I respect the decision of the court, and I think it's time to move on.
Along those lines, you said that you want to push a lot from the federal level down to the state level.
Yeah.
Is that something you think should be handled by the states and not the federal government?
Ideally, yes, but it's been handled by the Supreme Court, and that's where it is.
But are you saying your personal preference is that marriage should be only legal between a man and a woman, but not just you accept the court, but that you're fine with the change?
This is a decision of faith for me. It's something of faith for me, but my faith isn't everybody else's faith, and I make my decisions for me on those kinds of things.
So you're personally opposed to it, but you're comfortable with the law of the land. In other words, you wouldn't, for instance, try to appoint justices, nominate justices who would overturn the decision?
I wouldn't on that.
Yeah. Let's say you were president and there was intelligence that suggested an opportunity for American forces to kill the head of Syria, Assad. Would you authorize him to be killed by U.S. forces if you could do that?
Well, let's just say this: if we wanted to do that, we could do that now. I don't think that's a decision. That's a strategic decision that I think is driven by a strategy, if we had one. I don't think that's the issue there. It's not that we can't find him. It's not like it's not like Bin Laden where we're trying to find him.
I assume you agree with the current president. You'd like him gone.
I do. I think
So why not have U.S. forces kill him?
Well, I think you have to have a number of things in place, but I think Assad should go. I don't think we can allow him to stay there if we ever hope to defeat ISIS. One thing that I hope the world understands is that dictators create terrorists. That's something that we all have to understand. Now, Donald Trump will say, well, Saddam Hussein was very good at killing terrorists, so that was at least something that was good with him. Well, Saddam Hussein creates, and other dictators create terrorists. They create extremists.
Along those lines, you said in one of your earlier interviews that as a former CIA operative, you would be doing things very different when it comes to ISIS than what either President Kennedy's suggestion. Give us one or two or three things that you suggest. You come from a very different place in fighting ISIS that nobody's doing.
Two enormous things are different with President Obama and my view on what should be done. The first thing is we need to take the fight to ISIS on the battlefield in a much more serious way. That includes more serious airstrikes. It includes working with indigenous forces on the ground, developing them, taking a proactive role in that regard. It includes better aligning, coming up with a strategy, first of all. We need a comprehensive strategy to defeat ISIS, and that should be done in concert with our allies. Now, there have been issues between the Obama administration and our allies because they don't agree on how we should go about destroying ISIS, and that's meant that some of the allies aren't as engaged in the effort as we need them to be, frankly. So the second thing, just to finish that, the second thing is we really need to do a better job at fighting the ideology of radical Islamists. This is a battle, as much as it is a battle on the battlefield, traditionally, it's a battle of ideas, and we're doing a terrible job in that regard.
Let me ask you about two issues that have been long part of the conservative movement. One is personal savings accounts, private savings accounts as part of Social Security. You support that?
Yeah, I support most conservative solutions to reforming our entitlement program.
Including that one.
I'm not going to say necessarily that I am supporting that officially as a part of my positioning on reforming entitlements. But look, the entitlements are pushing us further and further into debt. They're growing our deficits are larger and larger. Our debts are larger and larger. We've got to do something to get them on a sustainable path. Now, we've got to keep our commitments to our elderly, our seniors today, but we've got to phase in some reforms
for future retirees.
For future retirees, we just have to do it. And Donald Trump says he promises not to do that. Actually, that's a promise that he makes publicly, but privately he says different things. He's not being honest with the American people about that. We absolutely do have to do that. I'll just say that we are on track to be spending more on debt service payments, interest payments, in about 10 years than we currently spend on defense. That's a huge, huge problem.
One last policy question to go to break. Vouchers allow kids in any school to take the money, the public money, and bring it to a parochial school or charter school, private school. Do you support that?
Absolutely. And the reason why I support it is because I see it as a way for children that are growing up in low-income families or in families that are below the poverty line to have a chance. I mean, this is just such a critical thing. We need to, our educational system is 100 years old. It was made for a time when we were transitioning from an agricultural economy to an industrial economy. We've got to have a new, updated educational system in a variety of ways, but I think that's a very important one.
All right, Evan, with all due respect, we are not done with you yet.
Okay.
We want to talk more about your White House bid and how you plan to actually put this campaign together.
Yeah.
It does take a village, as they say.
Sure.
And if you're watching us in Washington, D.C., you can now listen to us on the radio at Bloomberg 99.1 FM, and we will be right back.
We're back with the newly minted independent candidate for president, Evan McMullin. As I said before, people are just getting to know you. We talked about some of your ideas before. Let's talk about you a little bit more.
Sure.
Is it true, as I heard you say in an interview with Hugh Hewitt, that while you were in college, you started working with the CIA?
That's right.
How'd that start? When I was in college, I wasn't with the CIA.
Well, I became interested as a young man in working for the CIA when my dad brought home a spy film on a VHS cassette, by the way.
Well, do you remember the film?
Yeah, 3 Days of the Condor. It's a
Great
Redford
movie,
film.
for sure.
Yeah, one of the best. So there are a lot of spy films that are made every year. In my view, that's
A lot of things with payphones in that.
Yeah, that's right. Payphones used to be very important for spies. No longer. But yeah, that movie captivated my attention.
But how did it start? Did
How
they
does it actually
contact you?
happen? Yeah,
Did you contact them?
Get this call?
Yeah, well, it's important. So I started reading all kinds of books, right, about the CIA. A couple years later, I was still in high school. I called the agency and asked if there was anything I could do. I got in touch with a recruiter. We would stay in touch for a number of years after that. I finished high school, went on a Mormon mission, started college, and eventually, while I was in college, then the hiring process started. And I would do a semester at BYU and a semester back in Washington.
Did your roommates
with the agency.
know?
They did know, yeah, because at that time, actually, I wasn't undercover.
Yeah.
It was only after I graduated that I then went undercover and went through training and then on to serve.
We haven't had a president since George H.W. Bush who served in the Army you served in. Did you ever kill anybody?
You know, I served in war zones and in conflict zones, and part of our role at the agency was to eliminate threats and eliminate those who were posing threats to the country. My role was to learn about the intentions of al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups and the whereabouts of their operatives, and then to assist efforts to take them off the battlefield in one way or another.
Is that a yes?
I don't think answering that kind of question is directly the thing for me to do. But I worked very hard and served the country honorably and everywhere I went.
You're asking people to vote for you as an unknown, and I just want to go back to what Donnie just asked you. You had a lot of very intense experiences. It's obvious from the kind of assignments. You were doing some pretty intense stuff. You're not known to people. Do you not feel you need to be more open about the kind of things you went through as a young man to give people a sense of your life experience and the kind of pressures you faced?
No, I would love to. Yeah, I believe I'm totally open. I'm happy to answer anything.
Well, he asked you a direct question.
Yeah, no, it's good. I just, sometimes veterans who have served are asked questions like that when they're running for president, and then they brag about killing people, and it just seems off to me, frankly.
I just, with all due respect, I don't think either of us are asking you to brag about it. We're just trying to get a sense of the kinds of things you did. That's a pretty awesome responsibility for someone on behalf of the United States.
Let me try to share a little more information and see if it satisfies you. I certainly located terrorists, and those terrorists were either arrested or sometimes killed. That's what happened. So that's, other details like that, I don't know if they're important to share, but this is what we do overseas. This is what Central Intelligence Agency operations officers do, and this is the role. Just like our soldiers are tasked with going out and facing the enemy on the battlefield in a very traditional way. Intelligence officers in combat zones or in hostile zones are operating sort of in the backgrounds, doing somewhat similar things, but more quietly when necessary, against top leaders of terrorist organizations and others. But these are things that are known, and if you know that I served as an operations officer in the Central Intelligence Agency, then you can imagine if I'm serving in war zones that these are the kinds of things I did. But these are not things, and I understand that you're not asking me to brag about that, and I don't mean to suggest that. I'm simply saying that it's unfortunate that this kind of work has to be done at all in the world. It is necessary. The work of a Central Intelligence Agency operative is necessary as the work of a soldier, but it's unfortunate, and it's not something that I enjoy per se talking about.
I'm going to just pretend I was helping you on your campaign here.
Yeah.
I'm talking to you the first time as we are. You seem like a really good guy, a guy that I'd want to go into business with.
Yeah.
Tell me why, without talking about the other candidates, you're fit to be president. I mean, you seem like a really smart 40-year-old guy that has served this country, that has worked in the banking business, somebody I'd love to sit next to at a dinner party, somebody I would invest if you came to start a business. But as I'm sitting here, tell me why I would vote for you. I don't want to talk about the other candidates. What makes you qualified?
Yeah, absolutely. This is what makes me qualified. One of the biggest challenges this country faces is the threat of Islamist terrorism. I am the only credible candidate who has any experience whatsoever, firsthand, fighting terrorists. I know exactly what needs to be done to defeat ISIS and other such groups. And on day one, I can start that process. I have 100% confidence in that. I have zero doubt. This is my wheelhouse. And I look at my competitors, Donald Trump, everything he says about the topic is absolutely silly and in fact damaging to our effort. And with regard to Hillary Clinton, under her tenure at the State Department, she presided over ISIS's and the Islamic or the Al-Qaeda in Iraq's resurgence. So that was what happened while she was there. So the idea that she would then be the person to go destroy them, I think is flawed. I am the only person with this experience. I'm the only person who knows how to work with the military, the intelligence services, and law enforcement to get it done. The second thing is this. Well, there are two more things. The second thing is that my time in the private sector taught me. I worked with a variety of companies in a variety of different sectors. I learned what it takes for them to thrive in a global economy. And why that's important is because they need to thrive so that we have jobs here in America. That's another challenge that the American people are facing. We've got to get back to business. Our companies need to start thriving even more so than they are now so that we can get Americans better paying jobs. Now, lastly, the thing I'll say is that I've spent the last nearly 4 years working in Congress at senior levels. I've seen from the inside what's wrong with our system. Broadly speaking, it's that too much power is in Washington, located far away from the American people, so that the American people, the average hardworking American, has little say in what happens in the government. This has to change, and it changes by shifting more power from the executive branch back to the legislative branch, Congress, where it rightfully belongs, and more power back to the states. These are the things I know, and these are three major challenges that this country faces.
So many more things we want to talk to you about, and luckily we have you for another segment, so we're going to take a quick break. Back with presidential candidate Evan McMullin right after this. We're back with independent candidate for president, Evan McMullin. Again, so much we want to talk to you about.
Yeah.
Is it true that you had on your Twitter profile that you worked at Goldman Sachs and that was replaced by just saying businessman? Is that true?
I'm not sure. I'll have to check. I'm no longer managing my social media.
Are you proud of having worked for Goldman Sachs?
I'm proud of what I learned at Goldman Sachs, absolutely. So Well, go ahead.
I mean, they've been in this campaign already because Heidi Cruz worked there. What do you think of people who criticize their role in our economy?
Look, I think Americans feel like they're not being heard in our current system, and they feel like banks and other major financial organizations have some kind of fast or inside track in our system. That's the real problem. We've got to make sure that Americans...
But is there some validity to that argument? In other words,
I think so.
People at Goldman Sachs get really rich.
I think so, but I think we've got to be careful because we need banks and we need a strong financial sector so that our entire economy thrives and grows. I mean, we just have to have it.
So what's the valid about the criticism of Goldman Sachs?
Well, I don't necessarily think that the criticism of Goldman Sachs specifically is valid, but I would say of the financial sector, of banks in general, that maybe undue risks were taken with people's retirements, essentially, before the crash, and I think we have to look at that, and we have to ensure that that doesn't happen again, and some of that is driven by greed, and there are issues associated with all of that. But let me tell you about my experience at Goldman. I worked with companies in the healthcare sector, in the industrial sector, in the technology sector, consumer packaged products, and others. And I met with CFOs and CEOs and other members of the management team in those management teams in those companies, and I learned directly from them what challenges they were facing and what business models they needed to succeed in the.
Speaking of challenges, let's go over your to-do list as a presidential candidate. You've got fundraisers. Oh, vice president. Who's on that short list?
Well, I'm not ready to share who's on that short list yet. We'll share the decision when it comes out, but I'll tell you what I'm looking for. I'm looking for somebody whose interests are aligned with those of the American people. I think that's something that's been lost among the two major party candidates, frankly. I don't see that their interests are well aligned with those of the American people. And somebody who understands what truly makes America special. I think that's also lost. Donald Trump, for example, has no idea what makes this country special or great or however he wants to say it. He has no idea.
Mark, can we end on I'm the, with all due respect, Action News Team branding expert.
Yeah, let's take a look.
We want to put your logo up there because we found that to be curious. That looks like that could be for a vitamin, or what's going on?
A vitamin?
I don't tell. What's the thinking behind that?
Oh, okay. You're really putting me on the spot with this one. Well, I think the idea I was told that the star and the stripe was meant to suggest strength and patriotism and respect to the military. And I like those messages, and I like that logo, actually.
What is that green? What color is that?
I think it's blue.
That's
Do you
blue.
see green?
Oh, man, this is like
now we have a problem.
I was going to say,
I see forest green.
Note to self, red, white, and blue next time. I see green. I see like a turquoise,
It shows up on your screen as green.
But it's meant to be blue?
It shows up on my computer screen as blue.
All right, we got to go in a second, but I've been asking you all day off camera about your family. How are they reacting to this? You got two sisters and a brother?
Two sisters and a brother.
Your parents are both alive, live in the Seattle area.
Indeed,
right?
yep.
How do they feel about their brother, son running for president?
Oh, I think they're pretty amused and excited and proud all at the same time.
They think you're going to win?
I haven't asked them if they think I'm going to win. I hope they do.
What's like the body language?
Well, it's all been over the phone because it's moved so quickly, so I don't know exactly what the body language has been.
Got to get you FaceTime.
That's right. That's right. We should start using that. I believe I can win, and I believe that the American people are hungry for a new generation of leadership. Americans are highly dissatisfied with the direction of the country. The negatives of the two major party candidates are sky high, historically high. It is time for a new generation of leadership that unifies this country and that puts the country before their own interests.
Come back and visit us every time you're in New York, man. We'd like to talk to you about a lot more stuff. Good luck out there.
All right, thank you.
All right, that's Evan McMullin coming to a town near you soon. We'll be right back, talk a little bit more about Donald Trump's comments from earlier today, right after this. Before we go, a quick update on the fallout still coming of Donald Trump's remark today about Hillary Clinton and guns. Hillary Clinton's allies are continuing to pounce on this. Trump's campaign and other Republicans are largely defending their nominee. Susan Collins, senator from Maine, told MSNBC's Meet the Press Daily that while she didn't think Trump was calling for violence with his comment, she did see it as, quote, an example of Donald Trump's looseness with language that can lead to interpretations. Trump's communications advisor, Jason Miller, told Major Garrett of CBS, quote, I am surprised so many reporters are falling hook, line, and sinker for what is obviously a ridiculous charge. Again, regardless of whether you buy what the Trump campaign is saying or not, they should understand that a lot of people are interpreting this as a joke about violence against Hillary.
Here's the big problem. We're down to 90 days. It's one more day where the news cycle is about a referendum on Trump's temperament. And that's it. There are only so many more days. So we can go back and forth. I think it was in very bad taste. Bottom line, one more day. Is this guy have the brain power to be president?
Tim Kaine just responded saying that Trump was not temperamentally fit to be president based on this remark.
He just plays the narrative.
That's a line Democrats have pushed already. We'll see where this goes. I'm sure we'll be talking about it tomorrow. You can go to BloombergPolitics.com right now for an inside look at Donald Trump's upcoming meeting with evangelical leaders. Coming up on Bloomberg TV, my old boss, the Disney CEO, Bob Iger, great guy, is on Bloomberg West. Until tomorrow, Donnie and I will be back here same time. Sayonara.
I'm Mark Crumpton. You're watching Bloomberg West. Let's begin with a check of your first word news. Democrats and Clinton campaign officials are reacting strongly to comments made in North Carolina today by Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump. He spoke at a rally in Wilmington.
Hillary wants to essentially abolish the Second Amendment. By the way, and if she gets to pick her judges, nothing you can do, folks. Although the Second Amendment people, maybe there is, I don't know.
The Trump campaign says he was referring to the power of Second Amendment people to unify and not inciting gun owners. Brazil's Senate votes tonight on whether to put suspended President Dilma Rousseff on trial. She's accused of breaking the budget law. Rousseff's expected to lose the vote, which requires only a simple majority. Turkey's President Recep Erdogan met Russian President Vladimir Putin in St. Petersburg today. The meeting took place 9 months after Russia imposed sanctions on Turkey for shooting down a Russian fighter plane. Putin told Erdogan he hopes Turkey will restore constitutional order in the wake of that failed coup attempt. UK Prime Minister Theresa May faces a long list of daunting demands from the 27 remaining EU members when the time comes to negotiate Britain's new relationship with the bloc. I'm Mark Crumpton in New York. Bloomberg West is next.
Emily Chang, and this is Bloomberg West. Coming up, the lay of the land.